Welcome once again to Cinemaholics. It's been a minute. I'm John Negroni from the San Francisco Bay Area, and this podcast host, if you can choose to accept him, is Will Ashton. Hey, Will, how you doing?
Jonathan, I need you to do a podcast with your friends because, as you know, every Mission Impossible movie is about how Ethan loves everybody.
Yeah.
And not about how in the first one he's doing it by himself, and the second one is just him doing his own thing.
His team dies in the first one, to be fair.
Which I think was the intent. I feel like they don't really emphasize it too much, but that was sort of the reason why they keep adding the whole friendship angle to this one, right?
Anyway, it's about family. It's about family. And speaking of family, I have my literal brother. We have the same. We're related, 100%. That's not a lie. And not
and
only
that's
that,
what you think, John, until I take off my mask.
What? That's not Mike Overhulse. That's my wife.
Hey, John.
Hey, Mike. How you doing?
I'm good.
Mike, I didn't even know you liked Mission Impossible. I probably should.
I'm a big Mission Impossible fan. I don't know how this never come up.
I guess we don't talk much. I don't know.
You got the Benji look right now, I feel like. You got kind of like the light beard and the headphones, and I feel like you could easily, direct us to whatever we need to do until we realize that that's kind of your arc anyway, right? You're like, you were a side guy, and when we realized, like, hey, this guy's got the goods, we should put him into the main cast. And then
his life should be threatened.
And I also think it checks out because even though I just became a field agent, I'm always just kind of in the way. I haven't done much. Like Benji forever is losing fights. That's why in this movie I thought maybe they throw him a bone and let him win a fight. But no.
You're a team leader now. You're team leader. He wins a fight kind of in this. Let's get into it. We're talking about Mission Impossible Final Reckoning.
He won that fight in Ghost Protocol. He shot that guy to help Jeremy Renner.
I don't know. Okay, so I've literally only seen these movies one time each. I think the only movie I've seen more than once was the second one. Because that was my like we had it on DVD and I would watch it, because it was like James Bond.
You were like,
I was in that era.
I want to watch the bad one because I have bad taste.
No, I was a little baby John, and I enjoyed it. It was the only one we had.
It's such a John thing to have the second one be the one that he's like, actually, it's the best.
Guys, you don't understand that it's the best one.
I get it because, in fairness, for a while when I was a kid, the only James Bond movie I owned was Die Another Day. And I feel like that is kind of the Mission Impossible 2 of the Bond franchise, so I get it.
Hey, look, I'd prefer the second one over the first. It's funny, too, how this movie is just every Mission Impossible movie has been leading up to this. Every plot element's been important. What about the second one? Anyway, it's got that energy.
I mean, they showed him rock climbing, so it's like that was cool.
Yeah, and then they showed the motorcycle one, a little tidbit. They didn't really do much from Rogue Nation 2, to be fair, but that's fine. Yeah, let's talk about this movie. So this is, I guess, the final chapter of the franchise. It's never slowed down. It's always just been amped up as long as I've been watching these. I mean, the first one came out when we were little kids, like mid-90s. And I mean, we've seen Ethan Hunt, played by Tom Cruise, in these movies. He's hung off the side of trains and planes, automobiles, but also cliff faces. I'm actually surprised we never really saw Ethan Hunt in space. I mean, they never did the Fast and Furious thing where they made a joke out of that. They were like, no, that's nonsense.
But it makes sense, right? Okay, first off, I just really want to set the stage. I do think Mission Impossible is one, if not the greatest, a top 3 franchise in all cinema.
Action cinema. I'll say cinema. That.
Sure, I think it easily no argument made in action cinema. I think you have an argument to make in all film. Just personally.
Sure.
Pantheon of directors it's had is insane. The standard it's set for action, obviously. Yeah, but also, I do think...
We say Brian De Palma, John Woo, J.J. Abrams, ridiculously. Brad Bird in the fourth one, and then Christopher McQuarrie they settled on. They're like, all right, you can finish this out.
Pantheon on villains. Philip Seymour Hoffman was a great villain.
Yep, John Voight
was pretty good. And that one even is crazy because of how it's he plays Jim Feltz, who's
Yeah.
he's the Ethan Hunt of the TV series. So that
Right.
was in itself a really great twist that he was the bad guy. So I just want to say this franchise itself has been very good, but the credit I want to give it is that it has always, outside of that second one where it tried to be a James Bond movie, I think always has been the Mission Impossible franchise. It didn't try to be this kitschy, like, we're gonna go to space. It didn't try to like be John Wick after John Wick comes out. You know what I mean? Like, it stayed Mission Impossible. It had its comedy beats. It's about the team. It's about Ethan Hunt being the one. And I do think that this movie, I really love it. I was a fan of like how sentimental it was. I think it played to its strengths. And I think it also could have done things a lot differently and chose like in the climactic scenes to be a little different. And I really appreciated the heck out of it, especially from a 63-year-old Tom Cruise.
Yes. I think for a long time, these movies have been the sort of American answer to Jackie Chan and Jet Li movies in terms of what makes an American action movie more American, right? Like, you have the hand-to-hand fights, but okay, so we're going to do this in a very specific way that caters to the kind of Western, I guess, ethos, which in this case is Tom Cruise doing death-defying stunts. We have 8 movies in this series. It began, as you alluded to, in 1996 when Tom Cruise had his kind of like floppy fringe hairdo. Back when email was still kind of like they still had to treat hacking and stuff like that as like, whoa, you know.
Hey,
and then since
Job.
then, go ahead.
I was going to say Job at 314.com. That's the way to go. That's where you talk to God.
I haven't rewatched the movie since Fallout came out, so it's been like 7 years. But yeah, I mean, we've watched this franchise evolve our entire lives almost. And, from Brian De Palma's, kind of like full, it was like more of a twisty techno thriller when he started it out, and more true and faithful to the original Mission Impossible series, as Mike brought up. But now it's like, it's a full blown, it's globe-trotting, it's adrenaline fueled, it's a stunt opera that Cruise produces, his own company does. He and McQuarrie are soulmates as far as I'm concerned. And this is Final Reckoning. It arrives as the second part of the 2-part finale. And, originally Dead Reckoning came out a couple of years ago. That was part 1. This one, they were like, we're not going to do the part 2 thing because that doesn't sell tickets. We're going to do Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. There you go. So now we're getting all the payoff from that movie. And Will and I talked about Dead Reckoning Part 1 back in the day. Mike, we don't know what you thought of that film. That introduced the whole thing with like the entity, Gabriel Luna, or whatever his name is. I forget if that was his name, but the kind of like new baddie who was probably, I guess, like supposed to be he was there all along, and everything's been leading up to this kind of villain. And Haley Atwell was introduced into this series. We lost, what's her name? Rebecca Ferguson, who kind of like the actress, I think, was a little bit like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Well,
and here we are now.
She had a film Dune.
I mean, it was tough call, of the Burnett's. They could only have one. Mm-hmm. And I guess Haley Atwell was the one that made the cut because she's younger.
You could just see Vanessa Kirby like dyeing her hair furiously.
Right.
Like, I'm blonde. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Tandy Newton was like, I got out of here ages ago. So, but yeah, Mike, what did you think of Dead Reckoning? Were you a fan of that one?
I mean, I was a fan of the Mission Impossible pantheon, though. I would say it's definitely the weakest of the McHughes. It was my second least favorite of the entire series. But that being said, still enjoyed it. It's tough to base a part 1 without, the conclusion of it. I don't love that it was split into 2 movies. I would have much rather seen something closer to, the 5th and the 6th, where there is a connection. You do have like repeat villains, but each tells its own complete story without like letting up. I do think that this is a bit of a cop-out that ends with the cliffhanger. You have the whole MacGuffin, the whole movie. But that being said, the action's great. Comedy's great. They did what they could with it, also filming during COVID. So I give that movie, I think, a lot of like benefit of the doubts. But if I'm just watching it in a box and being a critic of it, it's not.
Yeah. And I would say too, with that part 1, you could sort of tell that they probably were putting it together without really totally understanding what they were going to do in the part 2. These movies famously have always been stunt first. They've always been like, we're going to come up with what the set pieces are going to be, and then later on we'll write the script, right? Like, they've admitted this in interviews. And I've always felt really bad for the various screenwriters who've been attached to this. In this case, Christopher McQuarrie is one of the credited screenwriters, but also Eric Jenderson. And I would say with this movie, the basic setup, we should probably just dispense with that so Will can tell us what he thinks. But the setup here is that it's been a few months, I guess, since part one. Ethan has like this key that can solve the big AI problem that they have. It involves like a submarine or something. And not that important. But Christopher McQuarrie is back, of course, doing the final film. And basically, Ethan Hunt, again, Tom Cruise, his whole team of Impossible Mission Force former team members who've gone rogue because they always do that. They're trying to stop this overall ridiculous AI supercomputer malevolent thing called the Entity. It's basically like Ultron from Avengers Age of Ultron, but not as, I guess, not as charismatic, I guess. But basically this AI is like creating this like global catastrophe because it's taking over all the nukes, and these countries are getting very, very close to being like, well, I want to do a preemptive strike. America is kind of the final line of defense, blah, blah, blah. Basically, what they have to do to stop the AI, they have to find its source code at one point. They have to find this sunken Russian submarine. And then they have to try to find a way to basically find the origin point of this AI and stop it. And it's very pressing or timely, right? Because we're dealing with AI all the time. AI is everywhere, and it's looked at as this kind of apocalyptic thing that seems kind of nice, though. That people are like, well, I use it to send emails. But a lot of other people are like, this is our poison pill. It's going to destroy everything. So yeah, Mission Impossible, Final Reckoning, it's playing a little bit with some metatextual stuff. But of course, it's mainly Tom Cruise doing ridiculous stunts, including the submarine, as we mentioned. Also, a biplane. Wonderful choice as a final send-off here, if that's what it's going to be. Well, Ashton, I know you like these movies. We've talked about several of them over the years. Final Reckoning, do you think this is one to be reckoned with?
Yeah, I mean, well, to touch on your earlier point, I mean, you did mention Jackie Chan, and I think that's a very apt comparison. But I think even more so, like you say, the stunt forwardness of it. I just think of like Buster Keaton and the way that they're able to kind of take, like these ideas, these set pieces, and they just kind of go from there. I mean, the last movie has straight up homage to The General in that respect. But yeah, I mean, I think more so than that, these movies have been the story of Tom Cruise. And, Ethan Hunt is supposed to be sort of a mirror for him. The first movie, this idea of like, now he's like producing for the first time. He's not just an ensemble guy from like A Few Good Men or Top Gun. Now he's his own dog. The second movie is like, I'm divorced and I'm going to be extra cool. And then the third one's like, no, I'm with Katie Holmes now. I'm married. I'm serious about this. Fourth one's like, well, that didn't work out, but I'm going to do these crazy stunts to prove that this is my franchise. And then from there, the McQuarrie films have kind of been him reckoning with like, I am Mr. Movies. I am the last, pentathlon of cinema, and I'm going to prove it. I'm going to be the king of the movies. And yeah, this one, I think, the desire to, kind of build up and kind of make an overarching story with these, I thought really commendably worked with Fallout. And I think in retrospect, that would have been probably the best way to end this, would have been just to kind of have that climactic, like, now we've done all these things and this is it. But I do really enjoy Dead Reckoning. I rewatched it not too long ago, and I think that does work on its own merits as its own sort of blockbuster because it has a sort of playful, fun energy to it. It's just kind of constantly going, and even if it doesn't really have as solid a structure as maybe some of the other ones do, it just kind of never lets down in a way that like some of the other Mission Impossible movies can kind of start strong and fizzle by the end. I think that one consistently kind of keeps building. For this one, I feel like the weight of it finally kind of crumbled under, because the first hour of it does kind of feel burdened by the whole aspect of like, we've been doing this for 30 years, exposition, doomsday speak, plot device, exposition, all this stuff. And it does kind of feel like it weighs the movie down too much in a way that I felt like Dead Reckoning Part 1 was able to kind of expounds on that information, but never lose the entertainment value. I feel like this movie it felt like it was a little too doom and gloom about it. And I think maybe a little too self-serious about it to really kind of capture what the charm of these earlier movies. But I will say, as it goes on and it does become more set piece focus again, especially by the end with the big plane sequence, the Red Baron-esque like plane fight sequence. I do think it kind of finds its stride again. And I do think it's fun and it gives you what you want from a big action spectacle like this. But at the same time, upon reflection, I do feel like I was kind of underwhelmed by this one, just in the sense of it being supposed to be the last one and the one that makes you feel like the conclusion of this big overarching story of Tom. I was a little let down, but not enough to feel like it was a totally missed opportunity.
Excited to dive into that. And of course, we're going to get into Mike's thoughts, of course. He has his aviators on because it's Top Gun Maverick Day. And never forget the big Memorial Day weekend from 2022. But before we do, I want to give some box office context before Mike chimes in with his thoughts on this one. And so box office wise, these movies have always been a little bit like they've never been huge moneymakers. Now, this one has done the best domestically on opening weekend of the films. That said, it actually did not top the box office this past weekend. We're recording this on Memorial Day. It came in behind Lilo and Stitch, which, to be fair, has been just like rocking the box office like Elvis. So there you go. However, here's the thing. It made $77 million domestically. Very good. I think the highest these films have ever made domestically opening weekend. Internationally combined, it's at about 204. Problem is, this movie apparently is considered one of the most expensive films ever made. Its budget was at least $400 million, and they are marketing the heck out of it. So most people are saying, yeah, this one probably has to make about $1 billion worldwide in order to just break even. So if it is the last one, then, they would be ending in the red most likely. But Mike, do you think that is deserved? And I want to know, what were your expectations going into this movie? Were you disappointed or not?
No, I was not disappointed. I don't mind this movie taking a victory lap. I don't mind this movie being self-indulgent.
100% agree. Yes.
I think it's earned it. I think it absolutely has the right to do it. And I also don't think it's so egregious to the point where it takes away from what the movie is doing, because it gives you everything that you do want from it, including like especially in a world, in a cinematic world, where cameos and references are the fastest way to actually turn me off to a movie. I think this handles that with like some random legacy character stuff. The Jim Felt stuff I thought was whatever, but like it was a quicker part of it. But overall, I love the action. I like the story. I like the conclusion of where it was. I liked what it had to say about its own franchise. And as someone who has, again, enjoyed this movie quite literally his entire life, like I'll never forget seeing the third movie is the first one I saw in theaters, and then I backtracked 1 and 2 and saw every single one in the theaters from there. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I can understand maybe why some people think that first hour is tough, but I think it's actually kind of what I was hoping it would do. I love that it does reference the entire history of the movies, and that those weren't nothing. I would hate if this movie, like the story was like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like Justin McHugh's is the in canon movies. I like that.
Yeah, the McHugh's plus Brad. Yeah. The post Mission Impossible 3, where it felt like the series had really found its like zenith. And then it was like, no, we're not done yet. Where I will agree with Will Ashton, which it's not common, is that, yeah, I think that this movie, if you take the first act, I mean, there are a lot of underwhelming elements to it. There's not a lot really happening. There are no significant set pieces until we get to the Bering Strait. And obviously we don't want to give too much away here, but there is a lot of like Ethan Hunt, like, oh my gosh, just suck him off already. Like it's a lot. It's a lot like he is the Messiah. He is the chosen one. And it does feel a little bit like, bro, who actually directed and wrote this movie? Who knows? Could it be the popcorn gobbler that we love and know as Tom Cruise? And it is. But to that point, I think that I agree with Mike, where I'm like, all right, well, you know what? 8 movies. And in a big way, I think Fallout, especially, where I also agree with Will to an extent, is that Fallout came out, I think, where peak film online criticism hit. I think ever since 2018, it's just all been kind of downhill. I think that online film culture stuff has just been way, way, way past its expiration date. and it's just not even fun to follow anymore. But Fallout was one of those last big moments where I feel like everybody just fell in love with the movie at the same time, and there wasn't a lot of nonsense. You could argue there was stuff that came out 2019 that kind of hit that as well. But I feel like Fallout, I just have such a cherished memory of it by comparison. And specifically, like Henry Cavill, how the franchise utilized him. That said, where this movie, I think, does have a little bit of weight, gravitas, and writing to it that I appreciated a lot, is the fact that I felt the tension and the stakes a little bit more than I usually do. I don't remember these movies super well the first time I watched them. I don't. I like Fallout. I remember, Henry Cavill like cocks his arms like guns, and there's a helicopter at one point, and bad guys, and somebody betrays. Yeah, he's a traitor, I guess. Okay, these movies I actually think were the first time where I felt like the writing and the set pieces were a little bit more in sync than usual, where I kind of cared what was happening a little bit more. With like the submarine, I had a clearer idea of what they needed to do. The whole Mission Impossible aspect of everything was a little bit clearer to me. And even the thing with the plane, it's super convoluted. And but I think because they only did 2 major set pieces and they're long, they're extended, but we spend a lot of time with them, I think I prefer that approach because then it just sticks in my mind more. And while it was happening, there's a lot of tension. There's a lot of like, I actually felt like the world was at stake way more than I have before. Like, I don't really remember much of Rogue Nation. There was just sort of like, I guess he was sort of Ethan Hunt's doppelganger or something. I don't even remember the actor. I can't picture him in my head. I'm sorry. And to be fair with this movie, I think the villain is kind of similar. I'm just like, he's very nondescript. But I think the fact that the villain really is like this AI thing, which you can't really picture, was kind of low-key genius. Because it's like they gave up. They were like, we can't do Philip Seymour Hoffman again. He kind of just nailed it. We haven't been able to figure out a good villain since then. Henry Cavill came the closest. Here it was just like, they don't look like anything. They're just AI. Everybody hates AI. Let's just do that. And I can tell that Tom Cruise hates AI, and I love that for him. So anyway, I dug this movie. I think that it's a fitting way to end the whole thing. Now, Will Ashton's been shaking his head. He has a clenched fist. He's very upset. But Will, it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, and the wild thing is, like, I don't dislike the film. Like, I think it's totally fine. I just think for a Mission Impossible movie, it does just kind of feel a little underwhelming for me. I think part of it is maybe, I mean, the villains have always been, after Mission Impossible 3, sort of an issue. I think the biggest villain problem is probably in Ghost Protocol, where that movie, the villain is just kind of just a cipher, even more so than this one, who's supposed to be like a literal sort of cipher.
Believe anything you said, because I could not tell you.
Right.
Like you could be like, Jeremy Renner was the villain. I'd be like, he sure was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that definitely is true.
But I mean, I think the telling thing for me about this film is I think Gabriel is fine, but he does kind of feel like a TV villain in some respects, which kind of, I feel like it's sort of fitting considering that this was a TV franchise initially. But it is interesting to me that there are, in the other movies, we have like these sort of big bona fide movie people. Like we have like Henry Cavill, and we have Jeremy Renner, and we have, a cast that has more kind of cinematic qualities. And I feel like this one's more crowded with a lot of TV personalities. We have Hannah Whitham.
Yeah.
We have that guy from Severance. We have Nick Offerman. We have, what's his face from
Hank Holt McElhaney.
Yeah, Holt McElhaney.
Yeah, from Mindhunter, your show,
right?
That you were in.
Yeah, and I feel like that's a sort of deliberate kind of meta commentary to this. Like, it does feel more of a like the bulkiness of if 3 was the pilot that J.J. Abrams directed that kind of rebooted the course. This is kind of meant to be like the big finale in that respect. And I like that, and I don't. Like, I kind of like what you're saying, Mike, where it's like, I like that it feels earned to have the sort of big climactic element, but I feel like those elements also just sort of muddy the waters a little bit. Like, it kind of just gets in the way of what I appreciate most about this. And that's like what you're talking about, John, where it's like, when I think about these movies, I don't think about like, man, Ethan is just a really good friend, and I really like how much he cares about other people. I think about the stunts and him running and all this stuff, and I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like at a point this takes itself a little too serious and gets a little too bogged down in like what it's supposed to mean, to the point where I feel it's kind of taken away from the Mission Impossibleness that I really enjoy about the franchise.
I would like to say a couple things. First off, I don't appreciate the Solomon Lane erasure. Solomon Lane is a good villain. So please, just because you can't remember his name doesn't mean that you need to be like, Henry Cavill is the best villain since Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Well, Solomon Lane is from Rogue Nation, right?
Solomon Lane is the bad guy from Rogue Nation, from 5 and 6.
Yeah. I have no issue with him. I'm talking about what's his face from Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. That's the villain of Ghost Pro.
I'm just saying you guys are like recently you mentioned Solomon Lane.
He's fine. I don't love him, but he's fine. He's icy and weird and Swedish, and yeah, he's okay.
But if your guys' complaint here is that the Mission Impossible movies have never been about Ethan caring about his team, it like absolutely has. The only one where Ethan doesn't care about his team is the second one, where they try to make him James Bond. Like, he cares about his team in the first one. That's literally the whole plot of it. He's so distraught that his team is dead. In the third one, he unretires, basically ruins his marriage to go back and save someone he trained because he cared so much. And there's been a plot point of like Ethan not wanting to lose a member of his team in every single movie since then. This one obviously leans the hardest into it, right? They lean super, super, super hard into it. I get the Messiah critique also, John. Like, they're really, really self-indulgent about the Ethan Hunt stuff in this, but also at a certain point, I don't mind. The last point I also wanted to make is on the Gabriel thing. I think this whole movie is actually super like Hitchcockian 1950s like movie coded. Like, I think how the movie is scored is similar. How the set pieces are set up, like
the
even
north by northwest of it all. There's straight out of it.
And so I don't mind that he's kind of like this zany villain. Like, I love like how he flies the plane is very like evil Baron.
Yeah.
And I don't mind.
You'll never make it out alive, Ethan Hunt.
I think he might actually say that like in a different way at some point in the movie. Like, but I loved it. I was there.
Your friends will die, see?
I will say to that point about the Hitchcockian elements, I think that's absolutely embedded into the franchise, and I was able to appreciate that even more because last week I just went back and forth between rewatching Mission Impossible movies, and then a local repertoire theater here was doing a Hitchcock week, so I watched Rebecca and Strangers on a Train and Notorious for the first time. And I think that element is in the franchise, but I think that's more prevalent in Dead Reckoning, that sort of paranoia, that sort of idea of like not knowing who to trust. And I think that was their way of kind of... What was that?
That's here too. I think this movie is pushing that even further.
I think it's there, but I thought the last one did that more successfully because they were trying to be more deliberately paying homage to Brian De Palma, who Brian De Palma is like the ultimate disciple of Hitchcock and someone who's like built his whole career kind of like being like, what if Hitchcock was like more of a pervert, you know? And like this whole idea of like, yeah.
Where I think where I could definitely get on board with that too, though, is that, I mean, when you're studying Hitchcock, one of the first things you learn about what made him so prolific was his editing. And if there's anything that you can take away from the Mission Impossible movies, especially under Christopher McQuarrie's, helm, the editing has been airtight. I think in this one, even more than the others. That submarine sequence, while I did laugh at the very end of it, because, come on, but like still, like up until that final moment, the editing in it is just pitch perfect. Like, I could not have asked for it to be any better. And even down to the plane stuff, like the pacing of it, where to extend, where to hold the breath. I mean, it's so well done. And that's why, to me, it's like, it's a weird less is more sort of situation. And I do like, though, Will, what you said about how this franchise has always been a really reflection of Tom Cruise himself. I couldn't agree more. It's obviously and clearly a commentary on Cruise's obsessive pursuit of trying to be this perfect movie star who's always in control, always like cinema is going to self-destruct unless he is going to save the day and come in with a Top Gun Maverick and a Mission Impossible movie that's going to revive action cinema, in a way where it was like quietly going to the dustbin because these Marvel movies haven't been working out and so on. And also, though, like, I think the idea of how Cruise just cannot quit. You cannot he can't stop doing this. He famously said recently that he will not stop making these movies or making movies like this or he won't stop acting until he's dead, because he is just so filled with so much enthusiasm for the art of making a film, and it's infectious. I think that's why, for like Mike, to what you were saying, it's like it's hard. Like the self-indulgence almost kind of feels okay, because it's like, well, at least it's somebody who means it, and so I can get good with that, right? I don't feel as guilty because he is so earnest and he wants to do this so much that like that self-awareness makes it easier to sink your teeth into it, I guess.
I think that's true, but the thing about that, though, is that's basically what Ghost Protocol is about. The idea of like, I tried to be the married, responsible guy, and I can't do that. I have to be the movie star. I can't be a normal person. Like, that's impossible for me.
But now I feel like it a step further of being like, even though the world itself has moved on and we have this AI stuff, I'm in my 60s. Mm-hmm. Like, the movie allows Ethan Hunt to be like a little bit more frail, a little bit more, like, I guess. That's a little bit.
I think that is 100% correct. Like, I like that this one is the first time we really see like Tom Cruise aged and wrinkled and like feeling like more of a, not like an old man, but like older. Like, he feels weighed. And it's like, this is heavy and this is serious. That's the aspect of it I actually kind of like the most. But to your point, John, I feel like all those aspects that you're talking about have already been explored in the previous films. So I don't know if this movie is necessarily adding upon that. I feel like it's more about kind of bringing the ship home, which I think it does well at the end. I just think it takes a really long time to bring that ship home.
That's the biggest issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. It takes way too long to get to the second act. It's a pain. It's a real pain.
I mean, but what do you like? I get that, but also like part of that is how many people have even seen all the movies, let alone recently. So if you do want to land that plane, but you want to make sure it's a full flight, like you do, like it requires like there are trade-offs being made there, right? Mm-hmm. And it is like the trade-off is a bloated first act.
But I guess because they're trying to set it up so it feels like this is actually an impossible mission. I like that tactile sort of like the fate of the entire world. And you feel it. You feel like, yeah, the world's going to heck. Like, they actually do the work to show you the unrest, the way that like the whole world is reacting to what's happening. It's not something that's happening secretly in the shadows of like, we got to stop this, because if we don't, like, it's not told to us constantly of like, oh, if they get this, then the status quo, blah. It's already showing that there's been some damage. Like, we're kind of seeing that people are in this mode of like, they're like setting up for the end of the world. Mm-hmm. And I like that. It kind of reminds me of Avengers Endgame.
I was going to say,
that movie worked was because they were like, yeah, the apocalypse kind of happens. And then it happens for several years. And people just kind of start to accept it of like, yeah, it's over. We lost and we have to sit in the loss. And like, this is a little bit like that preemptive way to get there thematically. And I think it works, because then when they're like, well, here's what we have to do to save the day. And everybody keeps coming up to Ethan of like, do you have a plan? Do you have a plan? And he's like, and then they just cut away before he can say anything. And it feels like we got to go to this exact place. We have to do this exact thing. We have to do it like, and like, even the characters are like, that makes no sense. Like, how are you going to make this work? And because you're showing like Ethan Hunt is confident in it, it's a movie. We know that it's being written, but the fact that they do the work to show that the characters themselves, they don't just buy into it super easily. There's a little bit of friction. There's a little bit of like, I don't know if we can do this. And also, it's not just Ethan Hunt who has to do it, but we have to do this too. I was invested because I was just like, this actually seems really hard. It seems impossible.
I agree. It's also the first one where they split up the team.
Yeah.
And it is hard to split up a team in a film and still make it seem compelling and fast paced. And boy, I think did they.
Yeah.
Like, even though they were split up, it did feel still so intertwined and connected to each team's like path mattering by the end.
You know why, Mike? Because you're family.
I mean, that is, you did touch on the end gameness of it, which I was going to say. I mean, to Tom Cruise's credit, I think he is, if he is the author of this franchise, which I think as a producer he is, he is a student of film, not only the Buster Keaton, Chaplin aspect or the Jackie Chan or the Hitchcockian elements, but obviously like recent, mega blockbuster sagas like this, the Fast and Furious franchise, the Marvel series, the James Bond films. I'm sure, John Wick has had an influence. Yeah, the idea that like all those films kind of influence this idea of like we need to establish the ultimate stakes and like this idea of like getting the team together and the values of all the individual components. Where I think the movie could be better is I think having Ving Rhames and Simon Pegg there, it's been such a boon for them because you see them age throughout all these films. You feel the weight of their relationship, and I think some of the best scenes in this movie belong to both of them. Where I think a movie kind of falls flat is some of the people they introduce. For instance, Shia Wiggum's partner guy is just kind of a nobody that I just don't.
Yeah.
Like, why not just bring in Jeremy Renner back? Like, well, I don't care about this other random
guy. Because he
guy.
got ran over by a tractor.
I know, that's true. But even still, like, you can bring Jonathan Rhys-Meyers. Like, somebody, like, who is this guy? And why should I care about him? Every time he's, like, there, I'm just like, it feels like when you have a bar crawl.
Be there.
It feels like when you have, like, a bar crawl and you're with your friends and, like, a random person, it, like, kind of goes with you to a second location. And everyone's just like, oh, is that your friend? Like when they go to the bathroom or something, he's like, "Oh no, I thought he was with you," and everyone's just kind of being like,
"Kind of personal." Will,
right?
Did this happened to you recently?
Who is this man? Like I know he was in the last one, but it's just like he had 5 lines in that one. Why are we hanging out with this dude?
He feels very much like, "Oh, we liked being on set with you during Top Gun Maverick. Please come be a part of this movie."
Was he also in Top Gun Maverick?
Yeah, he's in the.
I don't remember that.
He's one of the pilots.
Okay.
He was? I don't remember that. But
I can almost. This is not something I can fact check. This is something I feel in my bones. But I will.
Okay. I don't know if I agree, but
I'm sure he's a good guy. I just feel like he's just kind of a blank slate. Like I just don't get. Like when you see someone like Palm Clemenclef or whatever, it's like she's not doing a lot in this movie, but she has presence. Like she is there. Like that is someone you're like, okay, that's a clear movie star on the rise that Tom is putting under his wing. That guy, I'm just like. Was it?
Who are you talking about?
Palm, is it Clemenclef or Paris? The
Who?
French lady, Paris. Palm Clement. I don't know how you.
Oh, Palm Clemency.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. From Guardians. Yeah. Okay.
Like you see her, and it's
Sorry.
No. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say he's Coyote. So.
Oh, okay.
Bam, boom. Film nerd.
Okay. I'm just saying, I feel like he's probably going to be a great TV star someday. I just don't get the movie vibe from him right now.
Oh, fine enough. Yeah, I think the Kittredge stuff was where I was a little bit like, because they were like, "Oh, you're going to bring back Henry Czerny. That's cool." But I wasn't super like into it in terms of how they handle that. Angela Bassett is in this. I think she actually does. She does really well. She showed up in Fallout as well, but like, I think she plays the part with some real gravitas. There's a whole scene kind of built around her that works pretty well. I will say with Haley Atwell, I don't know how everybody else feels about it. Who knows? But I think Haley Atwell kind of just like, this is what the Rebecca Ferguson character should have been in Rogue Nation. I kind of wish that they had cracked the code on the writing for this kind of character a long time ago. Because it feels like Rebecca Ferguson was always pretty run note. She was kind of just this like femme fatale who didn't have a ton of personality. She was always just kind of like dangerous and who knows what she's going to do next. Haley Atwell feels a little bit more of like a fish out of water, but she's still competent. She has a reasonable function within the team beyond like, I'm also good at kicking butt like Ethan, but not quite as well as Ethan.
She
has like, she's a cat burglar. She has like a specific set of skills that she's just really good at compared to everybody else.
Yeah, she has like good chemistry with Tom Cruise.
She's fun.
And
more so in the last movie though. This movie, she was a little bit like, Ethan, wherefore art thou Ethan? And the last one, she was a little bit more. She had more of a mind of her own. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, and she reinvigorated Ethan's love of magic.
Yeah, it's like McHugh was like, "God damn, like we're losing. Like we've recasted this brunette so many times. Like then, like now she's died off. Like how the hell do we get someone else to be a part of this franchise? How do we write this in?" And then he rewatched the Nolan Batman trilogy and saw recasting and the dead, and then it was like, oh, he wound up with a cat burglar and people were fine with that.
Yeah. Anne Hathaway, what are you doing? I'm busy. Okay, great.
I thought the joke you were going to do was he watched the Nolan Batman movies and was like, that's it. Katie Holmes. She hasn't been in anything in a while. Let's get her to do it.
Tom, come quick.
Dude, if you want to talk full circle, that would have been great. That would have been. You know what? That's my new biggest miss.
I will say, I do appreciate, because speaking of meta commentaries, I mean, just look at the AI anxiety of it all. Because if there's one thing that this movie deals with the best in terms of its metaphors, it's this idea that, I mean, Jesus Christ, guys. I mean, like literally this past week, Google came out with this AI video that is basically promising that filmmaking is going to become a bunch of prompts, where it's becoming so realistic that who knows what's going to happen. The future of cinema feels very bleak right now, because it just seems like everyone's going to default to AI as the new computer generated effects of like, where is the humanity? Where is the personal touch? Where is the craftsmanship? Who knows? Because it's just feeling like AI is taking over. And that is so in line with what this movie is doing. Because this movie is basically saying like, it's on the cusp of taking over. The only way to stop it is to go back to like the source of the problem and kind of reverse the damage, right? And there's a little bit of a hopefulness to it, maybe naively so, but I really appreciate that they chose that as the final villain. It makes sense because it's such a perfect commentary with what's happening with action cinema, in the sense that, yeah, it's kind of in its death throes. There's a dead reckoning, final reckoning happening right now with, are we going to be able to make movies like this in the next couple of years? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. There is a deep anxiety there that just kind of fuels this film as you're watching it, that makes you feel uneasy. I felt upset at certain parts of this because I'm like, we're so close. We're basically there, where like stuff is just showing up. Like I was watching a TV show the other day, and like it was so obvious, an entire sequence in it was nothing but AI. It was just pure AI, that entire segment. And I was like, it's slop. It looks terrible. Pretty soon, it's not going to look as terrible anymore. It's going to become indistinguishable. And that's even more unnerving.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom Cruise is looking at this too and being like, well, I'll make a little movie for you guys. You want to enjoy, you want me to play some violin for you on the Titanic? Here you go.
I mean, especially with this protocol, the idea of like this franchise been like real versus fake. Like the idea of like what has made it so compelling, so fun is just like Tom Cruise is actually climbing this skyscraper. Tom Cruise is actually taking this motorcycle off this tall cliff. Yeah. It's like this whole idea of like Tom is like really doing these things. He's really hanging on to the side of a plane, or whatever. And yeah,
it's
it makes
the first
sense.
thing you hear. It's
right.
The first thing you hear. You talk to my parents, your parents, you talk to anybody on the street. What's the first thing they say about Mission Impossible? Gotta see it. So cool. It's actually him.
So, and I mean, that goes back to like the Jackie Chan thing that you were talking about, or even the Buster Keaton thing that we were talking about. The idea of like the auteurs of the film are the ones that are risking their lives for the sake of everyone's entertainment. And, and maybe it's a prolonged death wish that we're all enabling, or maybe it's what cinema has always been about. I like to think it's the latter more than the former, but who knows? Maybe it's.
I think cinema should always and has to be human driven. And that can take many forms. You can have human driven cinema and it still be animated, where you're using certain tools to make these things. However, where we're headed is going way beyond what is human driven. And I think like, just look at the competition this movie has on Memorial Day weekend, Lilo and Stitch. And look, I gave Lilo and Stitch a positive review. I think that as a live action Disney remake, it's nowhere near as magical and charming as the original, but I do think it's successful. It's competent enough that it does the job. However,
I mean, I like to think Tom Cruise as Ethan Hunt easily could have said Ohana means family at any point in this movie.
Yeah.
And I would have believed him.
Same. And never forgotten or left behind. And we are leaving something behind, right? In this kind of pursuit of what? Making money off of art. It's always been about that to an extent. We can't lie and say that it's always been this purist thing. But I think that there is a limitation. I think there's this idea that people want to tell themselves a story they want to say where, yeah, things get less and less analog, but that's life. That's showbiz. Like it's always, we're going to find new tools. But I think there is a breaking point that people are not accepting or reckoning with, which is that at a certain point you lose what makes the cinema human. And that is the pain, the failure, the messiness, the mistakes. When you start to make it all built around an algorithm that does all the work of the human brain without the human. It is a bad future, for lack of a better word. I think it's a future that we can say that here because we grew up with something different, but in 10, 15 years, who knows? People are going to grow up with knowing nothing else, and they're not going to know what they're missing. They're going to watch some of the old stuff, and it's not going to click with them because they're not going to have a basis for it. And there's something kind of sad and tragic about that. And that's what I was thinking about during this movie. That's why I'm feeling like, Ethan, you got to save the day, Ethan. Cinema is writing on this. Ethan, watch out. The propeller. Ethan, look out. And even when Ethan does something stupidly unhuman, where he's like, there's no way he could survive that. I'm like, there's no way that I could survive this. There you go.
I will, not to focus too much on the future, I want to go into the idea of the past.
Yeah, like, way to bring it all down, John. What the heck?
And say that I think my favorite thing about the film are the kind of little character moments. And I think the MVP of the film, and I'm very curious to hear if you guys agree, is Rolf Saxon, who is, a guy who was in the first movie, had like a cute little scene. We heard, what happened to him, and you just kind of forgot about him. And this movie, he's not just, and this is what we're alluding to, Mike. It's not just like a Marvel cute, like, oh, he's like back. You remember him? It's like trying to like
blinking, you'll miss it.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Or like it's not like the Rogue One thing where it's just like, hey, there was that guy from the previous Star Wars movie. Remember him? He has like a pivotal emotional stakes in the film. And I think that to me is like, I kind of wanted that energy more prevalent throughout the film, as opposed to like in the first hour when it's like showing flashbacks and like kind of just like talking about the last. I wanted more. Like, I wish the movie had less of that and more like the stuff with Rolf Saxon where it's like, hey, remember this guy? He's actually with his wonderful wife and they have this nice relationship and he's going to do this important thing for the plot. And I thought that stuff was great. I think that stuff kind of saves a movie for me, because that it's one of those things where it's like, you hear that they're going to bring it back. It's like, oh, that's cute, whatever. And then you watch the movie. It's like, oh no, he's actually like giving grounded, authentic performance that feels even more emotionally rewarding because you saw him 30 years before, and now you can like see how he can benefit this franchise in a positive way.
Sorry, yeah, I'll jump in. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. It's also, I would say, one of my favorite parts. For me as a fan, I actually avoided like trailers, any news about this movie, so I did not know that he was a part of the cast. So, was genuinely very excited to see him. But John, to your point of like a human touch versus AI slop, when he does show up, there is a very clear way Hollywood would have treated that. He's there, he's in the cabin. It's the Tobey Maguire out of the portal moment, and then what is he? He dies in the fire doing the Morse code. So when he doesn't, and I realize he's on board, I literally just got goosebumps. If you look at my arm, when I realized in the theater he was part of the third act, I was like, oh hell yeah! Like it was just so fun. It was unexpected. Yeah. And really great. And he was really great. The actor, I don't know his name, but
we'll have to put a light spoiler warning, though, of course, for folks, since sure,
yeah. Rolf Saxon, I believe, is the actor's name, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Well, okay, we're low on time. I want to get to the Rotten Tomatoes game, but of course, give you guys one last chance. If there's anything else burning on your final thoughts or whatever, I feel like I already said my piece. I like the movie, and I think that people should definitely watch. I mean, it's a no-brainer. Like, you watch Mission Impossible movies, like, you're not going to not watch this one. But yeah, was there anything else that you guys wanted to add before we take a look at what the critics and audiences have to say?
Two quick things. The score during the plane fight was one of my favorite parts, because it could have been the superhero score where the Mission Impossible theme is playing the whole time, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
And it really elevates that sequence.
The quiet of it is so much better because it's like, this is not Triumph. Who knows what's going to happen? Yeah.
And then Tremel Tillman, scene stealer, even like riding the high of Severance, I thought he just was really fun.
Yeah, I just finished Severance season 2, and he continues to be probably my favorite thing about that show. Now, Will Ashton will of course say to that, whatever. He's just like, I don't care. Who cares?
I haven't watched Severance season 2, but yeah, I mean, the only thing I have left to say is not enough Shea Wiggum. He's one of my favorite parts of the last one, and this one he's just sort of there. Yeah.
I thought you were being sarcastic because it sounded like earlier you were saying that you didn't like him at all. I feel like when I see him, I feel like he should be in a Scorsese movie. I feel like he should just be like, forget about it, because he has that look.
I think you misunderstood me. Before I was talking about Shea Wiggum's partner, the like black guy that joins the team.
Oh, I thought you were talking about him.
And that's why Shane was in Top Gun Maverick as one of the pilots.
Yeah.
I didn't think Shea Wiggum was a goddamn
That's why I was just like, that's what I was like, I'm pretty sure he wasn't one of the pilots, idiot. Like, okay, all right, my bad, guys. I messed that up.
Yeah,
okay.
No, Shea Wiggum is fantastic, and I think he was really fun in the last one. This one, I think he's just sort of there, and I was a little disappointed about that.
I'm not the biggest. I don't think he fits these movies personally, but
I think he fits them so well. I think he's big
the
personality.
Little twist with him at the end, I was like, I don't care. Like, whatever.
No, I think it's always good when they have supporting characters who are personality driven and just like can like dictate exposition with like, you know, their own personnel style. And I feel like that's the night and day comparison between him and his partner. His partner is just kind of a blank slate and just like, I'm here for the ride, I guess. I'm a good guy.
I mean, I agree with you there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no argument with that.
So that's why I was complaining about his partner guy. I just think he's like, you just could have gotten like, you know, Jeremy Renner or something there and said, I mean, maybe personal tragedy.
Things, though.
Yeah, maybe. I'm just saying, if you're gonna, you know, make this about, you know, the conclusion of this franchise, why not have someone with, you know, charisma there?
How about Paula Patton? I was waiting for her the whole movie.
Yeah, that's right.
So many returning characters.
We haven't seen her at all. Yeah, where'd she go? Too busy. She would.
I would have been fine with her, with Twandy Newton, anybody.
Yeah, we don't see her either. We never get any closure on that. I guess things between her and Ethan just didn't work out. Who knows?
I would have loved if it was Maggie Q.
Okay.
I thought she was great in Mission Impossible 3.
I was trying to remember if she died, but no, she was all right.
Nope, she blew up the car.
What was her name? The one who does die in the third one.
Carrie Russell. Carrie Russell.
Thank
you.
Yeah. Anyway,
in universe.
Let's play the Rotten Tomatoes game now. Mike, I know you haven't played this game as much. I'll refresh you on the rules. Basically, you're going to see if you can accurately guess the Rotten Tomatoes score. So don't look it up. Be nice. We have 319 reviews counted on Rotten Tomatoes. Let's do our best guesses. I mean, I am not going to guess because I can already see the score here. But the tomato meter. What do you think, Will Ashton? We'll start with you because you do this sort of thing all the time. What is the critic score you think?
Is it a 92%?
Will has guessed 92%. Mike Overhulse, over, under, and how much?
Just critic, no audience?
Just critic.
I'm going to say 88.
Well, neither of you are close. But Mike is the closest. It is 80%.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Pretty low. And one of those reviews is mine, and I gave it a positive, so I don't know what to tell you. I did my best. 80%, which, you know, I think it was in the 70s earlier this week, and so it kind of perked back up. I think a few people were like, hey, calm down.
I mean,
this movie's not for critics. This is a movie, you know?
I mean, it was for me.
I mean,
fair enough. Yeah. Good
I
point,
do remember, to your point, John, I do remember the early reactions were a little lukewarm at first.
I was very much like, this is it. You just have to deal with the first act, and then from there, it's like, delicious.
I mean, yeah, I'm just saying though, like it wasn't the initial reactions weren't bad. It was just kind of just like, I remember everyone that went into it was like really excited, and then afterwards they're like, oh, all right, well, it did some things well, and then
yeah. But let's go to the popcorn meter, which is a fancy way of saying the audience score. We have 5,000 plus verified ratings, pretty good considering it's only been out a couple days. We'll start with you this time, Mike. What do you think?
Here's where I'm feeling good. I'm going to say 93.
93. All right. Will Ashton, over, under, by how much?
I'm actually going to go with 85%.
85. All right. So Will says 85. Mike says 93. It's actually 89. So you're right. You're kind of tied. I think you're like right in the center by 4 points.
High five.
Look at that.
High five.
You guys are a nice little, you're on your own little team. Let's do the cinema score. I believe the cinema score is out. I'm going to double check right here. Now, for those of you who don't know, cinema score is going to be in the highest score you can get is A+. The lowest you can get is F. We'll start with you this time, Mr. Will. What do you think?
I'm going to say B+.
Will says a B+. Mikey O, what do you think?
I think probably a B-.
B-. Oh, Will Ashton, you take this one. It is an A-, which is, the folks in Vegas are taking one look at a Mission Impossible Final Reckoning and saying, my final grade is an A-.
I mean,
awesome.
I get it, actually, because Ethan Hunt is a man who gambles it all and always comes out on top. I'm sure the people in Vegas are like, hell yeah, brother. That's what it's all about, baby.
Yeah. All on red, all on red.
Right.
All right. And then we also like to do the Letterboxd average rating. Letterboxd is a social media website for film goers. And for Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning, we have 231,000 people have logged seeing the film, which is cool to see. Lots of people. 78,000 have given it that little heart. Now, the average rating could be anywhere between 0 and 5. We'll start with you this time, Will. Will Ashton. Will T.
Didn't
what do you think?
I started last time, right? Shouldn't it be Mike's turn to start?
Yeah, but Mike never does the letterbox.
True.
I feel like he deserves a little bit of a mulligan.
Tell me out.
Yeah.
Okay, no worries. I wanted to be fair.
He's our guest, Mike. He's our guest.
3.5 is my guess.
Well, no. That's not John. He wants you to answer.
Okay. He's the entity. Oh, no.
Taking off my mask. Ho, ho, ho. It's me, Santa.
We've been on the Mad Men podcast the whole time.
Hell yeah.
Ho, 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 ho. I've been reviewing this movie the whole time. Sorry, my voice is a little rough. I have a little bit of a cold.
That doesn't sound like Santa at all.
Too much gingerbread cookies.
That doesn't sound like him at all. Who's this imposter man?
It's a third mask.
Oh, man.
Hutton.
Hey.
Hey, what you guys doing over here?
It's Mickey Mouse. This whole time it was Mickey Mouse.
This train's off the rails.
What's the average rating for this movie?
What'd you say, Will? 3.5?
Yep, that was it for me.
I would say for the rating I would give, after the soapbox of I hold such a disdain for Letterboxd in my heart. No shade to anybody of my friends who uses it, but it is the death. We don't need a social media platform for everything. Not everyone in the world has to give their opinion like it matters. I know that's ironic since I'm on a podcast talking about a movie, but I'll go 3.7.
Looks like you guys tied. It's a 3.6.
Oh, okay.
Take it.
Well, that'll do it for this week's episode of Cinemaholics. I'm Mickey Mouse from the internet, Disneyland.
Oh, nice. From the internet, Pennsylvania, I'm Will Ashton.
Where are you from? Well, you're
internet
in between.
Waterloo.
Oh, nice.
You're not there right now.
I know, but
You're gonna be.
Actually, I'm Phineas Freak. This whole time, I was Vin Rames.
See you next time.
Ethan.